So, when does a president's power to protect the country go too far? When does it crash right into the rule of law? That is the huge question at the center of this high stakes battle between the White House and the courts, a fight over who really controls what comes into the United States. And we're going to break down that showdown right now. Now, we're going to start this story right in the middle of the action, with a bombshell court ruling that sent absolute shockwaves through Washington and Wall Street. It was a direct challenge to the president's entire economic agenda. Boom. With just that one sentence, a federal court brought a huge part of the administration's trade policy to a screeching halt. But, the real story here isn't just that the court did this, it's why, and what that tells us about the real limits of presidential power. Right, so how did we even get to this point? To really understand this ruling, we have to rewind the tape. How did a whole series of tariffs, designed for everything from national security to fighting drug trafficking, lead to such a massive constitutional showdown? Let's trace the steps. Okay, so this wasn't just about one single tariff. Not at all. We're talking about a really complex, multi-year strategy where different taxes were just layered on top of each other for all sorts of different reasons. And it created this complicated, kind of confusing landscape for anyone trying to import goods. So let's just look at how this all played out. As you can see, it really kicked off back in March 2018 with tariffs on steel and aluminum. And the reason given was national security. Okay, now fast forward to February 2025. The strategy gets bigger, targeting Canada and Mexico. But this time the goal is to fight drug trafficking. And then just 1 month later, bam, automobiles and auto parts get added to the list. You can see how this rapid layering is what really created the problem. And that leads us right to the core economic issue that the White House itself ended up identifying. They even had a name for it: tariff stacking. See, when you just pile different taxes onto the same exact product, you can end up with a much, much bigger bill than anyone ever intended. And that just creates chaos for businesses. And get this definition you're looking at, it comes directly from the president's own executive order. So the administration basically realized, hey, wait a minute, simply adding all these tariffs up could create a final tax rate so high that it goes way beyond what we were trying to do in the first place, whether that was protecting steel mills or securing the border. Here's a super simple way to see how that stacking actually works. Let's take an aluminum car door, for example. Okay, first it gets hit with the aluminum tariff. Then, on top of that, the border tariff is added. And finally, the auto parts tariff is applied on top of that. See? Each layer just adds to the costs, and the final price skyrockets for manufacturers, and you guessed it, eventually for you and me. So, in a pretty interesting twist, the White House issued a new directive to fix the very problem its own policies had created. This new plan, Executive Order 14289, was designed to bring some kind of order to the chaos and stop this stacking effect. The whole goal of this executive order was to create a clear set of rules of the road. The idea was simple, really. Just create a hierarchy, a pecking order, to decide which tariff gets applied and when. So let's see how that was supposed to work. All right, this table pretty much lays it all out. Think of it like a pyramid. At the very top, you have the auto parts tariff. If a product gets hit with that one, it's exempt from the others. Simple. If not, you go down a level and check for the border tariffs. If it has one of those, it's exempt from the steel and aluminum ones. The only ones that could still be stacked together were those original steel and aluminum tariffs. But here is the real twist. Even as the White House was trying to fix the economic problem of tariff stacking, a much, much bigger legal storm was already brewing. The fight wasn't about how to apply the tariffs anymore. It was about whether the president even had the constitutional power to create some of them in the first place. And here you can see the two sides of this legal battle laid out. The White House was basically arguing there's a national emergency, and it's not the job of unelected judges to second-guess how the president handles it. But the court, they came back and said, not so fast. They found that the president had overstepped the authority given to him by a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. The court also argued that, hey, these tariffs don't even seem like a logical solution to the drug trafficking problem they're supposed to fix. So what was the immediate result of this ruling? Well, the court struck down all the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China that were specifically tied to fighting drug trafficking. And the reason is key. These were the ones imposed under that IEPA law, the very law the court said the president had misused. But, and this is super important, the ruling didn't get rid of everything. Those original steel and aluminum tariffs from way back in 2018, they're still in place. And why is that? Because they were imposed using a totally different law, one related to national security. That law wasn't being challenged in this particular case, so those tariffs got to stay. So yeah, this ruling was a huge deal, but it is definitely not the end of the story. I mean, anytime a federal court directly challenges the power of the president, you can be sure the fight is just getting started. Not surprisingly, the administration's response was fast. An appeal was filed immediately, sending the whole case up the judicial ladder. And what that means is the final word on these tariffs, and the presidential authority behind them, has not been written yet. As trade expert Jack Sligel points out here, this is really just one round in a much longer match. The case is now going to be reviewed by the Court of Appeals, and you know what? It could very well end up in front of the Supreme Court, who would have the ultimate, final say. And that leaves us with the fundamental question at the very heart of this conflict, because this was never really just about tariffs on steel or car parts. It's a battle over the balance of power between the president and the courts. And it forces all of us to ask a really crucial question. In a time of national emergency, what are the true limits of presidential power?